Where do you live? This is meant to be an easy question, an icebreaker, if you will. For some of us, where do you live might invoke a childhood home, or maybe where you're currently living. For some of us, like myself, I've lived in a lot of places. So when someone asks, where do you live, or where are you from? I don't have a straight answer for them. I've lived in 4 states, 5 states. One was on the border, so I lived in Indiana, but was right across the river from Louisville and worked in Louisville. So that's like a 4.5 states that I've lived in. So when they say, where do you live? Where are you from? Lived a lot of places. I don't know. For many of us, where you live invokes some type of emotion. But where you live also can evoke something about you. So when I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, or that area, where you lived meant something. There were multiple neighborhoods, and Louisville is an old city. The University of Louisville is one of the oldest in the country, all because it's a river town. There's a falls, so all the ships on the Ohio River had to stop and port all of their stuff, which is also why whiskey is really big out of Louisville. All of the crew needed something to do for a few days while they ported all their stuff around the falls. So in Louisville, there's all these old neighborhoods. And where you lived, what part of town you lived in, said something about you. Louisville was also interesting in they asked this other question that was meant to bring something out about you, who you are. They asked, where'd you go to school? When I moved to Louisville, I was in my 20s. And as a 20-something, where I went to school meant college, right? I graduated from college, there to work, there's a job. That was not the right question. The question in where you went to school meant, where'd you go to high school? Because where you went to high school also said something about who you are. There were private schools. There were also magnet schools in Louisville, which is a big historical thing that had a lot to do with civil rights and busing kids across the city for segregation. And with these magnet schools, some were really good for math and science. Some were great for arts. Some meant you didn't do so well academically. Each of those schools said something about who you were, whether your parents had money and you went to the private school, or you just went to whatever was close or you got selected into. So where you live, in a lot of these contexts, means something about who you are. And then as you get older, you have choice in where you live. As a kid, you didn't have too much choice. You just went where your parents went. It's pretty simple. You just follow along. My first kind of choice in where I got to live was in college. I ended up joining a pseudo fraternity. We weren't part of like the Greek system, so we could do whatever we wanted, which was nice. And in that, the house that we lived in was a big house. There was 10 or 12 of us that lived in the house. So it was 5,000 square feet. And in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is not the town it once was, it used to be really nice in the 60s, but today it's really an industrial town, and there's 3 universities there: Indiana State, Rose-Hulman, where I went to school, community college, and a few others. So pretty industrial Midwest town. Yet it's got a lot of history. So that house that I lived in, 5,000 square feet, was on the historic registry. How it got there is Coca-Cola used to be manufactured heavily in Terre Haute, Indiana. And as the story goes that I was told about the house, is that one of the first Coke bottles was actually melted down and put into one of the panes of the solarium of the house. See, so where you live can have a story. It might be your first home. It could be your childhood home. And we have attachments to those things. Maybe it's your first apartment. Maybe where you live is just a matter of circumstance. So when we move to a new town, we typically get an apartment, get the lay of the land, figure out where everything is. Then as we get established in a particular area, we then move into our first home. Maybe it's our first home, maybe it's our second home. We understand where things are. See, the question, where do you live, is meant to say something about you. Why did you choose that house? Why do you live there? Why did you choose those colors on your home? In most areas, where you live kind of permeates the community. It says something about you. It's creating that story about who you are and why you're there. Choosing where you live as you get older matters more and more, or at least we believe it does. See, where you live, like in Louisville, if you lived in Germantown, it said something about who you were, who you are. Typically, you're a young person that liked to go to the bars because they were all close. And those bars also said something about you. But see, where you live as you get older, it's more about you, but it's also typically about your children. See, as you get older, it's what schools are you sending them to? You're choosing for them and what image you're going to portray. In New York, which is a whole different world and where you live, it comes down to the street. It's not even the neighborhood. It is the street. It is the building. It gets very specific on where you live and what meaning that has behind it. So with where do you live, I'm saying that ultimately, it does not matter where you live in this connected world. See, in a connected world, in a world with cell phones and video and the internet, it doesn't matter where you live. Your prestige, your value, and who you are doesn't come down to that neighborhood. It doesn't come down to that school. The internet in the last 15 years made us all even. It's an even playing field because where we live most of the time is in our phones. So it doesn't matter where your physical location is because digitally, everyone is the same. So when you're thinking about that prestige, that location, that emotion, most of us, and especially a younger generation, cares more about what their Instagram looks like than what their home does. See, it doesn't matter where you live. In this day and age, traveling, getting that picture from Mykonos or Tulum or wherever the next traveling place is, matters more than where your house is. So maybe living in that apartment is going to be better for you to go travel, see the world, and having that home. So where you live isn't the question that it used to be. And you can do whatever you want in this world, especially in our connected day and age.
Thank you. Thank you, Dylan. Very interesting subject. If you would please take your ballot.